The new O1 model is a total game changer for all AI agent developers. To really understand why this is such a game changer, we need to first talk about Systems 1 and Systems 2 thinking as described in one of my favorite books by Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow. So you know that feeling when you're talking to someone and it feels almost effortless, like you've been in this situation before? That's Systems 1 thinking at work. It's fast and intuitive type of thinking with little to no effort and almost no sense of control. It uses our subconscious mind to operate based on patterns we already recognize. For example, it is used when we are speaking on a spot, like in a conversation with a friend. Systems 2 thinking, on the other hand, is more deliberate. It requires a lot more mental effort, consideration, and reasoning. This is something we use when we are preparing for a speech or problem solving. But how does this relate to AI? Well, as Andrei Karpathy, one of the engineers behind ChatGPT, said a few months ago, LLMs currently support only Systems 1 thinking. They simply spit out text based on familiar patterns that they've learned before without any consideration. This is why they can't come up with anything original or create anything new. Or they couldn't before. Because what OpenAI has just done is introduced some aspects of Systems 2 thinking into large language models. Previously, if an AI agent couldn't find a solution, it would just keep looping on a task forever, or it would have to ask a human for help. For example, sometimes the browsing agent might get stuck on a research task because it encounters a paywall, and then it just keeps looping forever trying to avoid that paywall, when a much simpler approach is to go back a page and do another search. This is why for all complex, non-linear, multi-step workflows in our AI agency, we always add a way for users to supervise these agents. There are also some other ways you can use to avoid these hallucinations, like you can add hard-coded validation logic. However, the real game changer is that now with these new models, these agents can finally stop and think for themselves. So we don't even have to worry about this anymore. This has huge implications for all AI agent developers. First, as highlighted in this McKinsey study, the state of AI in 2024, the primary reason enterprises are still barely using any AI in their operations is inaccuracy. And obviously the fear of inaccuracy comes from incorrect reasoning, not from AI just outputting undesirable text. You can always add a disclaimer that AI might be wrong, and with Grok 2, I think people have finally started to distrust things on the internet, not just AI models. The biggest consequences of hallucinations occur when an AI model misuses an action, not just outputs wrong text. For example, if it refunds a customer when the refund shouldn't have been made, this will cause a lot more trouble. This is why this new model is not just smarter, but as OpenAI says, it's also safer. And secondly, we can now cover significantly more complex, open-ended tasks. From our experience at our AI agency, the O1 model essentially does what we do with my agent framework. It adds planning, breaking down tasks, exploring various options, and so on. However, now, instead of you having to create and prompt multiple agents yourself, add a chain of thought parameters and so on, this new model does it for you out of the box, and it does it much better. So the agent creation process is not only more reliable, but also more streamlined. You need fewer agents, less prompting, and less fine-tuning in order to accomplish a task. Now, how did they do this? Well, in theory, it's quite simple. They just trained an LLM on thoughts. Literally, they just showed these models how to think before speaking. That's it. In practice, however, it's definitely a lot more advanced than that. From what we know so far, OpenAI combined reinforcement learning with chain of thought synthetic data, which allows it to evaluate its own thinking with reasoning. So it doesn't just output thoughts, it actually learns to recognize and correct its own mistakes, break down tricky steps into simpler ones, and try different approaches. What we know for a fact is that the chain of thought training data is the secret sauce here. This is why OpenAI is currently keeping it private. So how exactly they process this data is still unclear, but I believe it's not all synthetic data, because from the few examples they shared, it actually includes words like and interesting. So this is not just another technique like structured outputs I talked about earlier. This is a whole new paradigm in AI. You see, before, 99% of compute in all AI models was being spent on pre-training and post-training, with less than 1% spent on inference. Now, OpenAI has significantly shifted this paradigm by dramatically increasing the inference time compute, which is now spent on reasoning tokens. This has been shown to significantly improve results, not just by 2 to 5% like we've seen with all other models this year. On some benchmarks which involve reasoning, it's been shown to improve performance 8 times compared to previous models. And it's not even GPT-5 or some new breed of a model. It's the same foundational model as GPT-4o as far as we know, only with this new additional layer on top. But the best of all is that as we increase the inference time compute, it seems like the performance just keeps on increasing as well. So this definitely tells us that OpenAI is heading in the right direction and that reasoning models is the next big thing. By the way, if you're using this model on ChatGPT right now, keep in mind that it's only a preview version with temperature set to 1. That's why some people on Twitter are reposting that it doesn't get the strawberry question right. In our agency, we always set the temperature to at least 0.3 when working on reasoning tasks. So OpenAI purposely released an imperfect preview model first so it can make mistakes and they can then use them to improve its reasoning even further. Now, of course, there are certain limitations. The first major limitation is that this model is a lot more expensive. It's significantly more expensive because it generates a ton of reasoning tokens before it outputs a response. And you are charged for these tokens as completion tokens, not as input tokens. Not only that, but the output tokens themselves are also 4 times more expensive than the previous version. So if you combine it all together, the total inference costs for this model are around 10 times more than GPT-4o. Many use cases with this pricing simply don't make sense. The second limitation is that it takes much longer to respond. Since it takes around 10 seconds to think, real-time applications like phone calls might not be feasible. And lastly, evaluators still prefer standard GPT models for certain tasks like personal writing and editing, so this model is primarily designed for complex problem solving and reasoning, not for creative tasks. Overall, it's really interesting to see how the limitations of these models are evolving over time to handle different types of tasks, much like how some people are better at math while others excel in creative tasks. So when deploying agents, we will soon also have to consider the right type of the model for the right role. Now, the question is, when should you use it and when should you not? My answer is use it the same way you use systems to thinking. Whenever your agent needs to perform any kind of design work that does not have significant time constraints, use this model. Think about roles like managers or CEOs who are typically more expensive because they need to guide the rest of the team. They kinda disappear once in a while to really think about the problem, scope the project, and only then they come back with the tasks that they assign to other team members. They don't execute the tasks themselves because this would be inefficient. They only provide high-level supervision. So only when a team member is stuck or needs any help, they jump in and provide more guidance. This is essentially how Devin did it. If you watch their demo video, Devin breaks down complex problems into manageable steps and then executes them one at a time. The reasoning model determines the steps and the approach, while other, smaller models can implement the code. So hopefully soon, with the release of this model in Assistance API, everyone will be able to create their own Devin for any kind of role in a matter of days or even faster. However, that's not it. You can also use these models to assist you in creating agents and process their knowledge, which I will show you in the next video. So what does this all mean for the future? Well, if you thought that the O1 model was groundbreaking, just wait until Orion arrives. I believe OpenAI is moving towards AI models that can take 10 to 20 minutes or even more, maybe even days, to deeply consider a problem, conduct research, with web browsing, other tools, files as needed, and then return to you with a truly novel solution. For example, they could tackle a problem which humanity has struggled with for decades. This will ultimately lead to an intelligence explosion, as scientists will use these models to significantly accelerate their own research.
Oh my god, it ran!
Now, here's where it gets really interesting for AI agents. With this new reasoning capability, AI agents won't just follow the same instructions. They will reflect on their own performance, identify areas for improvement, and then adjust themselves accordingly. This kind of self-awareness with this new model opens up the door to exponentially self-improving AI agents. In the next few years, I am sure that we will see some businesses that were created just from an idea and an initial set of instructions, solely using AI agents that constantly self-improve and evolve over time. But that's not it. In the meantime, AI agents will stop being just simple assistants. They will become strategic partners for businesses in all important decisions. They will analyze all your company's data all at once and then come up with strategic insights that you could not have possibly foreseen on your own. Also, this will of course lead to a significant increase in enterprise adoption, because companies that were previously cautious due to inaccuracy might finally find these new models reliable enough. More videos on the O1 model are definitely coming up soon, so if you don't want to miss out, don't forget to subscribe.